Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 197, Unexpected. Fei Sheng could not figure out what Yin Chang was up to. The Tse province garrison troops had arrived in Fan province for 2 days, yet no action had been taken. The few times Yin Chang went out had all been to take aimless strolls after his meals. Fei Sheng was burning with anxiety, but he was only part of the entourage and could not even be considered an army inspecting censor. Fei Sheng wanted to write to Shenzhequan, but he was worried that Yin Chang might turn out to be really capable. If it so happened that the garrison troops were to return in triumph, then in front of Shenzhequan, he would appear to be our real villain who made false accusations on the sly for his own selfish purposes. Even if he had been initially justified in doing so, he would still become the unreasonable one. On this day, Fei Sheng lay down to rest. He slept until approximately the hour of Su when he was suddenly awakened by his subordinate. "Bad news," the Jin Yue said. "That old crook is gone." Fei Sheng swiftly sat up and picked up his boots. As he hopped and stomped his feet into them, he asked in disbelief, "Gone? Did he run away?" Fei Sheng swiped the tent flap open and stepped out for a look. The entire campground was still illuminated, but there were only 1,000 or so men left. His heart started pounding hard. "It's over," he thought. If they lost the Battle of Fan province, then his future was as good as finished, too. But then, he thought, that can't be right. No matter how he looked at it, they would not lose the Battle of Fan province. If they win this battle and take down Fan province, then they would be rewarded. Yin Chang could even cement his position as the commander with this one battle. There was no reason for him to flee. Besides, half of Zongbo was already surrounded by Shenzhequan. Even if Yin Chang ran, he had nowhere to go. Not unless he switched camps and threw in his lot with King Yi. Fei Sheng looked up suddenly in Fan province's direction. That old crook better not switch allegiance right before the battle. The Jin Yue on night patrol returned bearing their whips in hands and sounded the whistle before dismounting. "There are traces of troops on the move 3 li to the southeast." Fei Sheng took a few steps forward and asked, "The garrison troops or the Fan province traders?" "They are heading our way." The Jin Yue hung up their whips and righted their blades. "In all probability, it's a night attack." Fei Sheng's heart sank. From Chu capital to Zongbo, he had never once served as a general, and he was no expert in mobilizing troops to war. He turned around to survey the campground. So the commander fled. What about the next in command, the platoon commander? Call him out to fight. The Jin Yue following behind him answered, "He fled too." Fei Sheng was really regretting it now. If he had known that Yin Chang would be so unreliable, he would have dragged Gu Jin over. At the very least, Gu Jin would be able to stand in for the missing commander. He calmed himself down and asked his subordinate, "How many men do we have left?" 1,000. The Jin Yue pressed against the hilt of his blade. The old man even rounded it up to a full number. Fei Sheng hissed through gritted teeth, "Well, I thank his entire family for that." Left without a choice, Fei Sheng could only brace himself and step into the role. He shouted for the soldiers to extinguish all the torches and prepare to evacuate. At the very least, they could not remain in the campgrounds as live targets for the enemy forces. Besides, they could still circumvent the enemies once they got to the snow field. But they had only put out half the fire when he heard the sound of the enemy's running footsteps in the wind. Withdraw for now. Fei Sheng knew just from the sound alone that he could not win this fight. Retreat. The remaining soldiers buckled up and dragged their blades along to follow behind the Jin Yue. They ran with all their might, cutting a particularly sorry sight as they threw everything away while taking flight. Fei Sheng had a horse, but he dared not leave these 1,000 men behind and flee back to Tse province by himself. The battle had not even been fought and they had already lost the soldiers. Fei Sheng could already imagine Shenzhequan's wrath. Fei Sheng had not even run a few li when he heard the sound of troops surrounding them right ahead in the dark night. They had pitched camp here for several days running, and the Fan province soldiers, having long gotten a clear grasp on the routes, had surrounded the front and rear of the campground in preparation of rounding them all up with one fell swoop tonight. Fei Sheng was caught in a dilemma, with no room to advance or retreat. This situation differed completely from the situation a few months ago in Dun province. He was exposed in this wilderness with nothing to provide him with cover. Perhaps the 1,000 soldiers he had on hand might be able to ward off small groups of surprise attacks, but they were undoubtedly too powerless to resist an onslaught of attack from a force that far exceeded their own numbers. The Fan province soldiers gathered together as they approached. These people were even more of a randomly grouped people than the Tse province garrison troops were. They had no armors or even standardized weapons. The circle of soldiers shrank as they closed in on them like an ant colony swarming towards them. Fei Sheng's horse and the garrison troops pressed up against each other. Enemy troops that were more than double their numbers were everywhere around them. The wave of enemy forces pushed against the wall of men, crowding the garrison troops so much that it was hard for them to even bend over. The only way to get a slim chance of survival in such a situation was to do or die. Gasping for his breath, Fei Sheng hesitated for merely a fraction of a second. He killed his horse with a slash, and as hot blood splattered, he raised his blade and shouted, "I am a trapped beast, just like all of you. If we cannot fight to the death and break out of this encirclement, then this can only be our burial grounds." The soldiers were already terrified when they were surrounded, and when they saw Fei Sheng riding on his horse, they were afraid he would abandon the troops and flee. That consequently made them even more unmotivated to fight. All they wanted to do was to kneel and beg for mercy. But now that Fei Sheng had slashed his horse dead and expressed his determination to advance and retreat with them, their morale was instantly boosted. Fei Sheng knew very well the effect of taking the lead in battle, and in the middle of his speech, he had already charged up to cut down the enemy's troops head-on as he led his men towards the northwest in a desperate fight to break through the encirclement. Right at this moment, a bellow suddenly burst out from the southeast, and a file of soldiers charged into the ranks of Fan province soldiers like a sharp blade stabbing into their bodies, tearing them apart with terror and sending sprays of blood splattering all over. In no time, 8 columns of troops had already penetrated their way in. Yin Chang's face was so flushed from drinking that it was hard to tell if he was drunk or freezing cold. He blew his nose, so happy that he leaped in joy and boomed in a loud and clear voice to Fei Sheng across hundreds of men. "Oh, you're still alive." Fei Sheng kicked out at the enemy's chest without pulling his blade out. All the words he wanted to say condensed into one: fuck. He had been used as bait by Yin Chang. Given that a total of 8,000 men from the Tse province garrison troops were mobilized, there was originally no need to design such a tactic to take down Fan province. But Yin Chang sensed something amiss after their arrival in Fan province. He had long heard that King Yi did not permit the commoners in Fan province to flee out of the territory, and he had installed troops at the borders to stop these people. But they did not encounter any obstructions when they crossed into the border. In fact, they had not even come across a single Fan province soldier. King Yi had already received the declaration of war. If he had the intent to surrender, he should have opened the gates a long time back to welcome them. But not only did he not open the gates, he even recalled the troops at the border. He was clearly concentrating his forces in preparation for a fight to the death with the Tse province garrison troops. Yin Chang guessed that Fan province would ally with the Deng province soldiers in order to emerge victorious. It was only when they had the numbers to crush the Tse province garrison troops would they dare to meet Tse province's attack in such a way. The old man was a crafty one. Knowing that he had not brought along enough men, he threw Fei Sheng out as bait for the Fan province soldiers to bite. He waited for the Fan province soldiers to assemble together in a group, then used the dagger formation to launch a surprise attack from the back to break them up before destroying them one by one. As Fei Sheng wiped away the blood, he saw those dagger squads cutting through the enemy forces like hot knives cutting through butter, so much that the Fan province soldiers were unable to converge together again. The blades of Yin Chang's squads were facing outward on all sides. It was a battle formation clearly drawn on the same one that Lu Guangbai used to fight the Biancha cavalry. Although Yin Chang made some changes by lining these squads up in very narrow columns, turning them from Lu Guangbai's square-shaped battering ram into a long-shaped dagger. Such dagger squads were ruthless and swift when launching a surprise attack from the back. The moment they pierced into the enemy camp, they would be able to tear the other party apart from within. The Fan province soldiers, who did not even have armors, had no time at all to cover their asses. In the blink of an eye, they were all cut down into bloody pulps of flesh. This old man really is something. Fei Sheng's confidence soared upon seeing victory within their grasp. But before he could open his mouth, he took a hit from Yin Chang's sweeping leg. Yin Chang might have been advanced in age, but his martial art moves with his lower limbs were the real deal, and it caused Fei Sheng to fall head first. Fei Sheng had only just landed on the ground when a blade above his head sliced through the air with a swoosh. The Fan province soldiers were now beating a retreat. Dragging his blade along, Yin Chang chased after them and hollered, "Where are you running off to, lads?" Since Fan province had amassed together its troops, then those who had turned up tonight were the main force in the territory. As long as they could defeat these people, there would be no more possibility of King Yu resisting. The morale of the Fan province troops was already crushed, while the morale of the Tse province garrison troops was at an all-time high. This was the moment to fight and win a quick battle. Yin Chang would never let them return to the city. Fei Sheng climbed to his feet and gave chase. But who could have guessed that this old man would have such amazing footwork? He was astonishingly fast as he ran and barged his way through in the night. Fei Sheng could only just about barely keep up. They chased for a few li when Fei Sheng realized that the direction was wrong. He was about to call out to Yin Chang when he suddenly heard the sound of horses' hooves. Reinforcements. Fei Sheng's legs straightened as he came to a halt and tried to drag Yin Chang back. "Elder Yin, it's the reinforcements from Fan province." Fei Sheng was just the same as Gu Jin, he had a keen sense of hearing. As he had few opportunities to tag along with the army, he did not have Gu Jin's ability to identify the type of soldiers from the sound alone. However, he had extraordinary observational skills, and he could tell that the sound of these horses' hooves were slightly heavier. They did not seem to be ordinary cavalry. The night was starless, with continuous stretches of snow dunes in the wilderness. Fragments of snow slid along the mounds, rustling in the wind as the wind blew them to the feet of the Tse province garrison troops. Yin Chang, ever the obstinate one charging at the fore, could already see the small number of cavalry. With his sense of smell wrecked from inhaling the fumes of one too many wines, he failed to catch a whiff of the smell in the air even with the wind blowing in his direction. Fine, delicate bits of snow pounced on Fei Sheng's face. In that instant the snow melted, he caught the smell of gunpowder in the air. His hair promptly stood on end. He made a sudden stop, swung his arms apart, and spoke sharply to the Jin Wei beside him, "Firearms." Before Fei Sheng's voice even fully left his mouth, flames burst out of the darkness like that of a meteor shower. Without even thinking, Fei Sheng sprang into the air like a tiger and pounced onto Yin Chang's back from behind, taking the old man along with him as he tumbled into the snow. That resounding bang slammed into his ears like a blunt instrument smashing onto his skull. The sound was so explosive that Fei Sheng nearly lost his sense of hearing. What a miscalculation! Fei Sheng's back, which had been hit by shrapnel, was burning with searing pain. He propped himself up with an arm and shook his head hard. As he could not hear his own voice clearly, he could only shout with all his might at Yin Chang, "This stuff burns! Retreat, now!" Fei Sheng had seen this firearm in the armory of the 8 great training divisions before. This instrument could only be equipped by the Chunquan battalion of the 8 great training divisions. It was restricted by the imperial court, with the blueprint to forge it left under the charge of the Ministry of War. Xiao Qiye and Shen Zequan both had designs on this blunderbuss before, but neither of them had managed to get their hands on the blueprint. No wonder this cavalry stood unmoving earlier. They were loading the firearms. Who knew how long the enemy had been observing them for the night? They were not here for the Tse province garrison troops, they were after Yin Chang. As the saying goes, strike at the most vulnerable spot, much like hitting a snake. 7 inches below its head, and Yin Chang was the Achilles heel of the Tse province garrison troops. Yin Chang had been blindsided by this bullet. The old man struggled in the snow, covering his ears as he shouted in alarm at Fei Sheng, "Why the hell is there thunder?" Where in the world would Fei Sheng have the time to explain things to an old country bumpkin who had never seen the world? He got to his feet and dragged Yin Chang along as he ran back. Yin Chang shifted his palm away and cranked his head to take a look. Another explosion resounded from the cavalry behind them, and the barrage of fired projectiles scraped past Yin Chang's buttocks, hurting Yin Chang so much that he yelled at the top of his lungs. Fei Sheng thought that Yin Chang had been hit. In a moment of anxiety, he said, "Don't you die now." No matter what happened tonight, Fei Sheng had to keep this old man alive. He knew very well that Shen Zequan was currently lacking generals, and Yin Chang would no doubt go on to be of great use in the future. The point was that if Yin Chang were to die here, then Fei Sheng, who was not knowledgeable in warfare, would return in disgrace. When that time came, it would remain to be seen whether or not he could still retain his original post, let alone have a future to speak of. Shen Zequan still had Qiao Tianya at his disposal. Fei Sheng was not his only option. Therefore, Yin Chang must not die. Frightened, Yin Chang took to his heels with his hands covering his head. He did not even need Fei Sheng to pull him along as he left Fei Sheng trailing behind in his wake after a few steps, repeatedly muttering to himself, "Strike anyone but me. This old man has never done anything unconscionable. Strike anyone but..." Bullshit. Following close on Yin Chang's heels, Fei Sheng felt pissed. With a sudden burst of strength, he cursed Yin Chang as he chased him, "You old crook, you are too black-hearted. Weren't you the one who threw me in the camp as bait?" Yin Chang turned his neck around to refute, "Warfare is all about deception, deception." They dashed frantically through the wilderness without letting up. Fortunately, the enemy did not have the intent to pursue them, and they withdrew after chasing the Tse province garrison troops away for half a li. After running for half a night and fighting with the Fan province troops for the other half, the Tse province garrison troops were now utterly drained and exhausted. It was such a cold day, and yet they were all drenched in sweat and panting like an ox while propping themselves up. As Fei Sheng wiped his sweat and caught his breath, realization hit him. He turned around. Looking at the first glimmer of dawn on the horizon, he spat hard and said, "We been tricked." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. By the time the military reports made their way back to Tse province, it was already the dead of night. Shen Zequan was wearing a loose-fitting robe as he finished looking over Fei Sheng's report in the hall. The entire hall was utterly silent. No one dared to take a peek at the expression on the prefectural lord's face. Everyone had believed that Fan province would be easy to acquire. They had not expected that it would not be an easy fight. The Tse province garrison troops had prepared for half a year, and Shen Zequan had previously invited Libai and the imperial army to train them, yet their first battle was so hopelessly botched. Anyone else would be infuriated. It was so quiet in the study that one could hear a pin drop. Yao Wenyu covered his mouth and coughed for a long time. As he clenched his fist, he said, "Your lordship, please be appeased for the time being. Firearms have always been prohibited by the court, so the appearance of the blunderbuss in Fan province is truly unexpected. Even though King Yi is in possession of such powerful weapons, his defeat is already cast in stone. He won't be able to change the outcome." Yu Xiaoze, who had just returned from Dun province, had not even warmed his chair yet. Afraid that Shen Zequan would severely punish the garrison troops because of this, he braved the solemn atmosphere and spoke up. Chill, your lordship. Oh no, he forgot to switch to bureaucratic speak. Yu Xiaozhe slapped his knees in chagrin and the advisors around him promptly bowed their heads even lower. With this interruption from Yu Xiaozhe, Shen Zequan's fury cooled down. He covered the letter and his expression warmed up again. Only then did the rest of them dare to breathe. Yuan Zhou is right, Kong Ling continued in a soft voice. Even with firearms in his possession, King Yi can't stir up any waves. Fan province is in short supply of grains. Even if he shuts the gates and stays inside, there is no way he can make it out alive. As Yao Wenyu lowered his sleeves, he said, but it's rather strange, if King Yi already had firearms in hand, how could he have been forced into a corner to such an extent? Just by reselling them to the Mount Luo bandits, he would have been able to earn enough to cover the military salaries for recruiting new soldiers. Moreover, the confrontation this time doesn't seem like King Yi's usual style. Zhou Gui recalled the words Yao Wenyu said a few days ago, and the color promptly drained from his face. Could it be that King Yi has already been killed by the bandits in Fan province as Yuan Zhou had anticipated? This battle feels rather odd to me when I look at it, too. Zhou Gui knew Yin Chang well. His promotion of Yin Chang was not what Fei Sheng thought it was. Rather, it was because he felt that Yin Chang had the capability to fight wars. If King Yi also had such an ability, then Fan province should have launched an attack on Tse province a long time ago. Kong Ling was getting suspicious, too. As Fei Sheng said in his letter, it indeed doesn't look like something that King Yi would do. Silence gradually returned to the study as everyone waited for Shen Zequan to speak. Shen Zequan raised his eyes to look at the group with an icy expression in his eyes and said, "Reply and tell Yin Chang that either the garrison troops will return in triumph 7 days later, or he will come and see me with his own head in his hands." Shen Zequan gave the garrison troops abundant provisions and even equipped them with superior equipment. If the garrison troops could not even take down Fan province, then there was no need at all to further consider his grand, ambitious plans to reign supreme. A mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers. After this spring, Zongbo could only have one master. Regardless of whether King Yi was real or fake, Shen Zequan was set on taking Fan province. End chapter. Note: dagger or point or spearhead formation is a formation that concentrates manpower and firepower to pierce enemy lines and create an opening for its attacking forces. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 198, Yin Chang. Fei Sheng no longer dared to belittle Yin Chang. The power of last night's dagger formation had been shockingly terrifying. Fei Sheng had never even heard of that sort of formation before. If not for the sudden appearance of the blunderbuss, they would have already been in the city of Fan province this morning. Having been startled out of his drunken stupor by the firearms, Yin Chang held the bowl in his hands and craned his neck to ask, "What the heck are those things?" Fei Sheng was staking their victory entirely on the old man this time. Seeing Yin Chang's empty bowl, he hurriedly filled it up again. "Blunderbuss. Have you never heard of them before?" Yin Chang shook his head like a rattle drum. He had spent half of his life in Tse province, and the highest ranking official he had ever met was Zhou Gui. He could not even list out all the 8 great training divisions, let alone know of the Chunquan battalion. He was truly an old country bumpkin, a barely literate man who had never read a single book on warfare and relied entirely on feeling his way through battles. "What's that?" It exploded with a bang, like a strike of lightning. Yin Chang crushed up the dry rations. "We'll get struck before even making it up to the front. How are we supposed to fight this war? It can only play its users for fools." Fei Sheng drew himself closer to Yin Chang. Both of them were equally filthy and covered in blood from head to toe. With his fingers, Fei Sheng made a circle the size of a gun muzzle and showed it to Yin Chang. The reason why the cavalry didn't move yesterday was because they were loading their firearms. It takes effort to get it to fire from this opening, and it only works if they're in close proximity. They blindsided us this time. Damn it. Now that I think about it, it's possible that those are all the firearms they have, and they used it just for the specific purpose of scaring us. Yin Chang finally kind of understood it. Oh. Aren't those like firecrackers then? You're absolutely correct. Think of them as firecrackers. It can't hit you if you run far enough. Fearing that Yin Chang would be cowed by the blunderbuss and would not dare to launch further attacks, Fei Sheng went to great pains to explain to him. Think about it. If this stuff was really that good to use, why did Chunquan Battalion only use it to perform for the Emperor? It doesn't work as well in battles. Fei Sheng did not lie. Why did the Chunquan Battalion set the firearms on the back burner? Precisely because it was hard to use. Loading them took time. Use them in street fights and the firearms would probably still be in the midst of warming up even when the enemy's blades had already slit their throats. But pull away from the enemy, and the lethality of the firearms would plummet. Furthermore, the recoil would also make it difficult to aim accurately. It even burns asses. Yin Chang was still nursing a grudge over that fired round last night. He thought for a moment while staring at the campfire. Are these things expensive? Very expensive. Fei Sheng soaked the dry rations in the bowl and gobbled it down whole. Even the Jinyi Wei don't have its blueprint. They are manufactured by the Ministry of Works under the supervision of the Ministry of War. The quantity is limited every time, and they even come with numbers engraved on them. Yin Chang promptly bared his stained, yellow teeth at Fei Sheng in a grin. Then fuck it. I only fear that those firecrackers are cheap. Fan Province is so broke-ass poor now, so how would they bear to use expensive stuff as they please? It's great if its reach is limited. I don't believe for the life of me that they can cower like tortoises in there for their entire lives. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Door panels swung and slammed under the intense howl of the north wind. The streets of Fan Province were strewn with corpses all over. King Yi's tattered banner fluttered in the wind as beggars fought over it to keep themselves warm. The entrance of the Yamen's wind shelter was crammed with hundreds of people, most of which were the elderly, weak, women, and children. All the young and healthy men in their families had either been abducted away by the bandits or coerced by King Yi into joining his army. These people were so famished they were all skin and bones and they were all here to beg for food. This winter wind was so penetratingly freezing that people were dying of the cold every night. Brother Huo wishes to open the granaries and distribute the grains to the people. Yang Qiu, a bandit of Fan Province, was sitting on the Taishi chair with his leg propped and spoke with a merry smile. It's a good thing. We are all for it. But the Tse Province garrison troops are right at our city gates now, and the soldiers in the front line can't go hungry. As long as the soldiers don't starve, you can distribute the grains to whoever you want. Both sides of the hall were packed with people standing or sitting. They were all bandits from Fan Province and Deng Province. Yin Chang was right in his guess. To guard against the Tse Province garrison troops, King Yi had assembled together the troops from both prefectures in the hope of bargaining with Shenzhequan at the critical moment. But who would have known that he had invited a wolf into his own house and brought disaster upon himself instead? In the end, he was killed by Huo Lingyun, and these were the very people that Huo Lingyun was colluding with. Sitting on King Yi's seat, Huo Lingyun spoke, "The city has run out of food, so I will have to borrow grains from my various brothers here. Shenzhequan has sealed off the routes to the west, and the traveling merchants no longer dare to come this way anymore. After the 10th month, all I've been eating are fucking stale grains." Yang Qiu felt resentful just to bring up the matter. "I was even thinking of borrowing grains from all of you. Old Fang the 10th, you were working hand in glove with King Yi, and must have had your fair share of licking his balls, so don't you dare sit here with us and pretend to be poor." Old Fang the 10th, who had a penchant for men, felt so self-conscious on hearing this that his face blanched with anger. He clenched his walnuts and sneered. "What a bunch of bullshit. Drop that hoodlum act of yours. My grains have long been used to make up for the military grains, feeding ingrates like you. Why the fuck are we fighting a battle for when we have no grains? Yang Qiu said with ill intentions. Might as well run while we can. Run. Old Fang the 10th spat. The entire territory to the northwest has been choked off by Shenzhequan. Either you go over to Tianfei Watchtower and surrender to Commander-in-Chief Qi, or you go over to the Hashi River and work in cahoots with the Bianxia people. Isn't Shenzhequan going to attack Duan province in the second month? Say we mess up the game for him and leave an opening in Zongbo, would he still dare to throw his weight around here? These people were bandits. At the beginning, they heard that Shenzhequan and Xiao Qiye had killed Lei Changming in Tse province, and then they got wind that Shenzhequan had killed Chai Yu in Cha province, followed by Lei Jing in Dun province. All the well-known bandit leaders in Zongbo had met their fucking ends in Shenzhequan's hands. Even if they thought with their feet, they knew that Shenzhequan would never let them off. Yang Qiu initially thought Huo Lingyun was not qualified enough to hold down the situation. He had come here to fish in troubled waters. His plan was to haul King Yi's money vault away before the city was breached, but when he arrived, he found Old Fang and all these other people having designs on the money vault, too. Everyone was presently sitting here mutually scheming against one another, each of them only too anxious for the others to hurry up and die. Although Huo Lingyun was sitting at the head, he was willing to play second fiddle. Without showing any expression, he said, on the contrary, there's no need to be overly anxious. Shenzhequan sent an old man this time, one without prestige and capability. Moreover, he's timid. He won't get anywhere. It was true that Yin Chang had no reputation to speak of, but Yin Chang had disposed of nearly half of their soldiers with just one appearance. Huo Lingyun himself was the one who went out to fight last night's battle, but he didn't share the details of that encounter. All Yang Qiu and Old Fang the 10th knew was that they had suffered severe casualties. Yang Qiu thought of Huo Lingyun as just a pretty face who was all looks and no substance, practically good for nothing. Even so, he still had a smile on his face as he said, "That's right. Brother Huo comes from a distinguished family. The hell does an old country bumpkin like him think he is? I'm only worried about food, nothing else. If we keep up with this rate of consumption, we won't last until spring even if we repel the Tse province garrison troops." "Then what do you have in mind?" Old Fang the 10th said sarcastically, "Let's hear your brilliant ideas." Yang Qiu rolled his eyes at him and looked at Huo Lingyun. "Yan Hero still has shops in Dun province. Let's trade King Yi's family assets for grains with him. He doesn't acknowledge anything except money, so he will definitely do us this favor. As long as we can survive this winter, the throne of King Yi will be as good as Brother Huo's. It won't be too late for us to recruit soldiers and buy horses then." Old Fang the 10th listened to Yang Qiu's nonsensical boasts but did not speak up to warn Huo Lingyun. Huo Lingyun was exactly his type, but he had seen King Yi's mutilated corpse back at the yamen, which the dogs had gnawed until it was all unrecognizable. He could not help but have the sense that he was not beyond sharing the same fate, too. Having remained close to King Yi for these past 6 months, Huo Lingyun was not aware of the situation outside. Looking as if he believed Yang Qiu's words, he said, "But with the garrison troops besieging the city now, how are we going to conduct this business with Yan Hero's shop? My people are most familiar with the areas in Dun province. I can use Luer's spies too." Yang Qiu had some unscrupulous business going on with Qiang, and he had tagged along for a few rides when Qiang went to Dunzhou for business in the past. "If Brother Huo is willing to trust me, I'll make a trip for you." Old Fang the 10th instantly turned hostile. "So you have it all plotted out, huh?" They snapped at each other and incriminated one another, neither willing to give in. King Yi's money was future life insurance for them, and no one was willing to share it with the others. As such, they remained locked in a stalemate here, making the atmosphere rather tense and heavy. Yang Qiu had no way to refute Old Fang the 10th's words. He grew more and more restless with anxiety as he sat here, worried that Huo Lingyun would not be able to hold up against the Tse province's garrison troops, so he steeled himself, deciding to kill them all and grab the money tonight. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. A Fan province soldier stationed on the city wall was relieving himself at a corner when he suddenly heard several whistles coming from below. He fastened his pants. Not daring to stick his head out directly, he glanced down from the middle of the battlement. A bonfire was blazing in the wilderness, and the Tse province garrison troops had taken up formation in front of the city walls with their shields held up, yet they had not sounded the war horn. Yin Chang stood at the very front and took a few gulps of wine before shouting, "Is King Yi here? Call him up the city wall. Let's have a little chat." The taste of being pierced by the dagger squad's sharp blades the night before was still vivid in the Fan province troops' minds. Yin Chang looked exactly like an old maniac when he chased after them, and the impact of that encounter still lingered. The platoon commander of Fan province was a bandit under Yang Qiu. He had been specially assigned here by Huo Lingyun. He leaned over the battlement and spat at Yin Chang. "Chad, my ass. Don't even think about tricking us out of the city." Not to be outdone, Yin Chang cursed back. "All of you in Fan province are fucking wimps. Cowering cowards like you are not even fit to kiss my ass. But, little brats. Do you even have the balls to fight battles? Get your ass down here and carry our prefectural lord's shoes." Yin Chang, having hung out in the streets in his youth, spontaneously blurted out all the obscenities that came to his mind. With wine to add to his fun, he could stand here and curse for 3 days and 3 nights without ever repeating himself. His words were crude and vulgar as he swore with great relish and led the garrison troops to jeer with him, having such a merry time it was as though he was celebrating the spring festival. The platoon commander, having served under Yang Qiu, had become accustomed to throwing his weight around in Deng province. Even King Yi himself treated him with courtesy when he came to Fan province. Seething with resentment now, especially after getting chased all around by Yin Chang and even stabbed in the buttocks last night, he propped himself against the battlement and let loose a torrent of verbal abuse. The moment the platoon commander retorted, Yin Chang waved his hand to instigate the Tse province garrison troops behind him to holler back with a litany of curses. The platoon commander was unable to beat them in might, and even his voice was drowned out. Furious, he pounded the wall hard and commanded those at his sides. "Shoot him." The Fan province troops swiftly put up their bows, and the Tse province garrison troops below them promptly took to their heels. They cursed as they ran while the arrows rained down noisily on the shields they were equipped with. Once they were out of the Fan province troops' range, they stood at the perimeter and started to boo in unison at the top of the city walls. Yin Chang leaped beyond the shooting range and raised both hands to signal for them to sound the war horn at the back. The old man's ruddy face was glowing as he yelled, "Fan province." The Tse province garrison troops responded in chorus, "Is all as chicken as they come." Yin Chang shouted again, "And King Yi." The Tse province garrison troops continued, "Is a fucking cur." The Fan province arrows could not reach them. Soldiers of all ranks leaned over the battlements, trying to get a swear word in as they cussed back. A pity its effect was minimal. Yin Chang even composed a rhyme for the Tse province garrison troops, which they hollered at an ear-splitting volume from where they stood. Half of the platoon commander's body was already sticking out as he cussed until his face turned livid with rage. He bellowed across the air, "I dare you to repeat that, you old buffoon. I'll slice off your rotten tongues. Bring it on." Yin Chang seemed to be drunk as he stepped on the snow and turned around in circles. As he clapped his hands, he said, "If you don't come, I'll take you as my daughter." "Daughter, heh." He pinched his fingers and twisted around to look back at the platoon commander at the top of the city wall, imitating the latter as he said in a shrill voice, "I'll slice off your rotten tongues and tear off your faces." Yin Chang was already advanced in years, and he had so many wrinkles on his face he could even make a flower pattern with them. Yet his imitation of a woman was absolutely spot on, having gotten that feminine charm more or less down right as he stomped his foot and sent pieces of ice beneath it skipping all over. The platoon commander's face blanched. The composition of the Fan province troops was a rather complicated one. The men could not be considered soldiers at all. Sworn enemies and adversaries were even thrown into a squad together, so who knows? Perhaps they were all now laughing behind the platoon commander's back on seeing him being humiliated. The platoon commander had never before experienced such humiliation. He shoved aside the soldier next to him and ordered, "Prepare the horses." The soldier hurriedly chased after him and said, "Huo. Fuck that Huo." The platoon commander abruptly yanked up a soldier and barked at him. "I'm Chief Yang's foreman. Huo Lingyun was still a wee kid wetting his pants when I was back there in Deng province killing the garrison troops in. Is he even fit to command me? Bring out the blunderbuss." The sight of Yin Chang scampering away like a frightened rat from the firearms last night was still fresh in the platoon commander's mind. They had lost half their men in the tussle with Yin Chang then, when Yin Chang had split them up with his formation. But with the city of Fan province right behind them tonight, they had even more confidence than they did last night. At most, they would retreat back if they had to. What was there to be afraid of? Either way, they had horses. If Yin Chang still dared to pursue them after they withdrew into the city with their bows at the ready, he would be courting death. Yin Chang tugged up his trousers. The old man reached back for the hilt of his blade. He dropped the merriment, his cloudy eyes as quiet as this expanse of the night sky as he adjusted his breathing, a strategy he had thought of on his own. As long as he calmed his breathing before a battle, he would be able to stand firm on his feet. There were incredibly gifted generals in this world, they were young and were not only ambitious but also dazzlingly brilliant. But there was also another kind of general who never had the opportunity to make a name for themselves. They always had their backs to the firmament of heaven, their eyes solely on the small piece of land beneath their feet. Yin Chang was long past his prime. The instant the city gates opened, Yin Chang once again felt a rush of fighting spirit coursing through his body. That was the desire that had been burning within him to this very day. He could not see the onslaught of old age assailing him and felt as if he was still as young as he had once been. The fervor that blazed anew in him let him draw his blade without the slightest decrease in his speed at all. Win one battle. Even if he was no famous general. End chapter.